Hello, it's Ben again from Couchside Resistance. Thanks for tuning in, and if you like this content, please subscribe, like, and if you know, even to my one subscriber, I really appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions on how to make this content better, that would be greatly appreciated. Anyways, on to the video. I was just pondering in my noggin. Not good a lot of times, but considering the circumstances, it's impossible to not have some sort of empathy towards the people that this administration is severely affecting, especially minority communities. And I feel like this whole MAGA movement is one big contradiction. It's like it claims to be about patriotism, but then doesn't want this administration doesn't want to feed our troops. This administration claims to be about Christianity, but then they celebrate greed and celebrate excess, and celebrate idolatry, really, because they worship that fucker. They worship Trump, and this party also claims to be about toughness, but Trump literally dodged the draft, and along with other people within the MAGA movement, like Ted Nugent, for example, he dodged the draft, and he's also all into that machismo exterior, that a lot of insecure people, put themselves, don't put themselves through, but, immerse themselves in, I guess. And, as a Christian, I believe hypocrisy is one of the things that Jesus spoke out against most, and especially to those who claim, to be the most pious, like the Pharisees did. And I just feel regardless of what faith you are, I do think we all can share in this experience called life together. And I think the Bible ultimately teaches us to be at peace with all men, and that's what Paul teached. And I don't think we should put contingencies on that. We should love people regardless. We should want to be at peace with people regardless of who they are, regardless of what they believe, regardless of how they see things. And and if we just simply allow this to persist and we just let them beat us down, we're not going to be able to get past this. And if we, and the thing that we have to do the most is call out. We have to call it out, even if it's with, within our own family members. We have to call out the hypocrisy. We have to, my own mother, I have to, I have to try to educate sometimes, unfortunately. I love her to death, but at the same time, I feel she has some kind of hang-ups about her. My dad was a virulent racist, and and I constantly had to speak out about how, well, I've met black people, and they're some of the greatest people I've ever met in my life, so I don't know, that obviously doesn't prove anything, but neither does his point, but I do think there is an historical trend of systemic racism in our country that you can't deny. And that's another thing that this movement is so, this movement is just packed with one contradiction after another. And the next contradiction is the fact that They act as though this country was made for Christians, only for Christians. And it's like, you know, first of all, the Bible never promises Christians land that we can occupy and dominate. And two, the Constitution is very clear in the First Amendment that there should be a separation of church and state. And, you know, it's like this movement is not based on anything, and we have to know that, and we have to understand that, and we have to not, you know, lose sight of the fact that we do have substance on our side. We have reality on our side. You know, like I said, regardless of what you believe, if you're a leftist, if you're a progressive, we share in the struggle against the elites. And I hope this video resonated with you. And if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe, like. If you feel like it, donate via Patreon, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.